right, welcome to today's meetup to our online and physical audience. We are at Africa's Talking headquarters in Lavington. Africa's Talking being a company that powers communication solutions all across Africa. Do this by providing communication APIs in the form of SMSs, voice, airtime, and USSD. With us today, we have a lovely guest, and we'll be delving deep into the topic of empowering the African tech evolution. We'll get to hear nuggets and insights about bridging the gap and seizing the future. For our audience following along online, feel free to ask your questions and we'll be able to get to them and answer. That being said, let us get started. Before we begin, we'll do with simple introductions of the voices you'll be hearing a lot this evening. Myself, I am Sylvia Jabet from Africa's Talking in Developer Relations. I will now hand over to our community lead who will introduce himself and introduce our guest.
Oh, hi everyone. I'm Josephat Mwangi, Africa's Talking community lead, Nairobi, and I'm a full stack dev. Yeah. So we'll hand it to our lovely guest who will introduce themselves, tell us what she does, yeah, and tell us more about her. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Faith Kilonzi. I am a full-stack software engineer. I'm currently working with Kenya Airways. I'm also a student. I am a Master's of Science in Big Data Technology student at the University of East London. Currently on my final semester. And I'm also a podcaster. I host the Global Tech Sellers podcast, where we talk about all things tech, and very much excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. You are a podcaster, so this should be something you will particularly enjoy. But it's interesting to hear that you are working and you are also studying in the tech field. Tell us a bit about that. How's that juggle for you right now?
Definitely not easy, but very much doable. Actually, when I started, I was a full-time software engineer, actually, but at some point I was like, I've always wanted to do masters because I have some love for research and also academia, a bit of that. So I'm always doing multiple jobs or multiple things at the same time. So school was just one of those things that I felt like I had some extra time. Then, it requires a lot of discipline also to balance, but very much doable so far. But it's self-paced, so it's not so hard. Yes.
That's a very interesting angle to it. School is what you do when you had some free time, yeah? That's quite a statement for some of us. School was, because we started, we had to finish. And here you are using your free time in school.
I think it depends on where you thrive at. I think I thrive best in an academic background. So school is one of those places that makes me, I think, validates me to some extent. So I feel like school brings out the best in me. Yes.
That's a very good way to put it. And you said you're doing your master's right now.
Yes.
So what did you do in your undergraduate?
I actually did a Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science as well, yes.
In the country?
No. I did it in Ashes University in Ghana.
In Ghana.
Yes.
Wow. Tell us a bit about that experience. You've been an international student ever since you finished high school or even before at this point?
No. I actually did my high school in Kenya.
Okay.
I did my high school in Kenya. Then after that, I was very sure I didn't want to study in this country. I wanted to study outside. So one of the things that I did immediately after high school was take community service projects, just anything that would put me in the spotlight of getting a scholarship, and also just doing SATs to apply to schools in the US, in the UK. Yeah, but then Ghana happened first, and I was like, this is a good opportunity, so I might as well take it. Yeah, so that's how I ended up in Ghana. Yes.
Interesting. So you studied in Ghana, you're currently working in Kenya and studying for a university that's UK-based, if I'm not wrong?
Yes, it's UK-based.
Ah, wow. Quite the global citizen we have over here. Really love to see it. Love to see it. Yeah.
So you said you're a full stack.
Yes,
Can
yes.
you just tell us basic, a synopsis about the journey? How has it been? Yeah.
Okay. So I was actually a business student at some point. When I moved to Ghana, I was a business administration student, but just happened to go to a university that was a liberal arts college that in the first year gives you opportunity to explore different fields. So I would explore different subjects. I did a bit of engineering, I did a bit of entrepreneurship, calculus, programming. Then in the course of that discovery, I realized that I actually loved coding more. So that's actually how I started getting into computer science. So I switched in my second year towards my third year. I had to do multiple courses at the same time to just keep up with the rest of the people and graduate around the same time. But then while still in school, I did a bit of projects, then some internships. I would actually come back to Kenya and do a bit of internships. My first internship was actually in a payment and fintech company. Yes, so that's actually how I heard of Africa Stocking at the time. It was actually somewhere in 2017. I mean, I wasn't so good at the programming at the time. I was just doing basics of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but I knew I wanted to be a developer. After that, just built projects on the side. Then immediately after school, actually before I graduated, I got a job to work in a consultancy firm in Ghana. And that's how I now became an associate software developer in the company. And since then, I've worked in banking, I've worked in majorly consulting, and right now in the airline business. Yes.
Wow, that is quite the journey. I love that if there is a developer who's listening in and they have just written their first HTML script. Yeah, they have a page with 0 CSS and just their name there or hello world. And they're now thinking, this is possible. This is very doable, right?
Very doable.
Yeah, we all start somewhere.
Yes, we do. We do, please. We do.
Yes. Yeah. That's very nice. It's also very interesting that you had the chance to explore and try out a few things and realize that this programming, this is the one. I think this
actually
is the one.
I think that's like one of the best things that happened to me in my career, because if I didn't have that exposure, maybe I would have ended up, I mean, I wasn't a bad business student, but I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much as I enjoy my current role. Yes.
So for you, the tech field lured you in, and specifically since at the time you were in Africa, Africa's tech field at that time, what exactly was very intriguing?
I think at the time we were just doing a bit of Facebook developers community group in Accra. Those were some of the things that we would do. A Google Developers Club started in our school around the same time. But a lot of the conversation at the time was mostly just web. I was interested in the web development. I would get excited about other technologies, but not mostly. I was more focused on web. But it was very much exciting. I actually thought I would end up in fintech because those are some of the main companies I worked with in the first times, and that's how I ended up in banking. Yes.
That was your area.
Yes, that was my area. I enjoy bit of payments integration and all that, the API aspect of things. I like to say I'm more of a full stack developer, but if I had to choose, I always choose backend. So that's why that's my area. Yes.
So this story of aligning divs, buttons,
centering divs, there is this, like today I had such a hard time trying to change a date picker in TypeScript, and I was like, I can't be doing this. I can't. They wanted a 24 format. Then I was doing it in 12 hour, and now they actually want to edit it in text field, and I was like, it's so mundane. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's one of the things that. The repetitiveness of the front end is where the issue is at. Yes.
It's good. It's good to know where your strength lies and what you prefer.
Yes.
Makes work a lot easier for you.
Yes.
And it's very interesting that in your journey you've mentioned communities. See, at Africa's Talking, we have quite the community.
Yes.
It's ranked top 1% developer community engagement in the world.
Wow.
So if we're ranking on global standards, they would say that the engagement in our community is at the top 1%.
Actually, I think at the time when I started out, I think almost every developer plans on buildings an app that can make them some money. And one of the things we were working with at the time was trying to do some SMS integrations. And that's how I actually discovered Africa's Talking. Because I think at the time people thought around 2017, 2018, people are so much into bulk SMS integration. Yeah. So that's one of the things that's how I discovered Africa's Talking. So yes, I've heard of them.
Oh, wow. So you are part of our dev community. You have
at least I've used the documentation.
How was it? How was the documentation?
How was the documentation? Yeah. Easy to follow. I'm actually a technical writer, so I am able to follow through a lot of these things because I write documentation on the side. Yes.
That's very good to hear because it shows that the community is actually
the community is actually working. Yeah. Please, your job is safe.
Wow. So you can attest to communities being part of the reason why the tech industry in Africa is really booming and is growing at a faster rate.
Yes. I think when people preach tech, they just preach it as make money quick scheme kind of thing. And with a lot of boot camps coming up, people making courses here and there and all that. But it's also quite a lonely journey if you're doing it on your own. And sometimes it requires a lot of mentor attention, and the exhaustion that comes with that makes you feel very alone if you don't have someone to help you debug, for example, or if you're facing issues and you don't have someone to walk the journey with you. So I think communities just give you that support to know that you're not going through this alone. You can always consult, you can always get to hear what other people are building if you run out of ideas, and you can come together and create something great together. So it's communities have helped me a lot personally, and I think they are very helpful in this journey.
Yeah, and you've said a very key thing. Most people get into tech and just imagine that the first app you build will boom. Yes, it will be the next Facebook and the next Meta, and you'll be a billionaire, bazillionaire overnight.
Yes.
Which really does not happen. There's a lot of patience involved.
That's true.
There's a lot of learning and growth and seeing progress. Progress is not becoming a superstar overnight.
Yes.
Seeing one step that has changed tomorrow. Seeing 2 steps you've moved the next day.
Yes.
And that's where community comes in. People hold your hand. People guide you through.
Yes.
And you do not feel alone.
That's true.
Very, very important.
So how many years can you say you have been in the tech field?
Okay, so I would actually just say 4 to 5 years professionally, since school. Yeah. But since school, I would say like 6. Like 6 solid when I knew what I was doing, not when I was doing Hello World, my app, and all those other tutorial-based applications that we always build when you're learning.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've seen you have been in at least a good century, a good time in the tech field. So the big question that one of our audience previously asked in the last meetup is Africa behind in terms of tech?
See, there are a lot of that's an interesting question, but I think Africa is where it's supposed to be. But it's making strides. I think every time we use different, or we read about Africa, or we talk about Africa and Africa's development in various sectors, we never really give credit to the fact that when people were starting out, we were like 10 steps behind.
Yeah.
So where we are at right now, I mean, how many startups have come up since tech started booming in Africa? So many. So much funding is being pumped in Africa.
Yeah.
So many startups are coming up. So many people are getting employed within and outside Africa. So I don't think we are actually behind. We could do better for sure, and we're making the strides, but we have to give the credit to ourselves because people are working out here. I mean, when you hear, and also something else is that because of our economic situation in our various countries, we never really get enough exposure.
Yeah.
And also the enough capital and funding to even, I mean, someone might have a very good application or product lying in their GitHub repository because they don't have the right means to take it out there. So I feel like we're making strides. We could do better with a bit of support, and I'm sure all these things are coming together.
I'm
very positive.
There are three things you've mentioned. Let's start with one. Like that we can do better.
Yes.
So the big question is, what are the steps for us to do better?
What are the steps to do better?
What's the roadmap?
What's the roadmap?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think for a start, one of the things that we can start with is in our education. In our education system, sometimes, I think we were talking about this in our podcast, we were talking about digital literacy in Africa. And one of the things that came up was that right now, in as much as people, like there's someone still in the tech scene or in a corporate environment that has never even used ChatGPT since we started talking about it. They don't even know what it's about. Like they think of tech as TikTok. Yes, you remember when Facebook came out and someone was like, yo, if you get into Facebook, if you sign up, they're going to use your data. They're going to take you to Shakawala. It was painted as something demonic. I mean, that's an example I'm giving. But one of the things that I think what I'm trying to say is in our education system, people are not curious enough. Yeah. But that's not fostered in school.
Yeah.
I think when you're taught to get into finance, you're just focused on the books, the balancing of the books. If you're a medical doctor, you're more focused on treating the patient and going home. Like people are so focused in their individual fields that they never think about how they can apply tech in those fields. So I am thinking that one of the steps that we can do is expose tech and apply tech in almost every aspect, because you don't need to be a software developer to be talking about tech. You can be coming up with the next solution using technology in your field of work, in your accounting business, in your medical business, or something of that sort. So I think one of the steps that we can make is, I mean, when you watch Shark Tank, you always find people that are in totally unrelated fields applying technology, and you're like, oh, so we can actually... Now you imagine someone who came up with a washing machine. I mean, that's technology being used right there, right? But that someone sat down, realized that this washing dishes is so redundant, or it's so annoying, tedious. So let me find a way. How can I make it better? So I don't think we are taught to be problem solvers from day one. We are taught to go through this path, finish, get a job, and spend 10 years in that career and get pension and go home, right? So we never really, we don't like figuring an alternative of making our work easier. So I hope that can be accommodated in our education system, but also even as adults. You don't need to be a software developer to come up with the next big thing. You can come up with it. If you're a plumber, how can you make it more efficient? Yes.
I love that approach, that tech transcends every field.
Yes.
It transcends every industry. And so you do not have to write code to actually bring tech solutions.
Yes, because right now, imagine if we had to rely on software developers and CTOs and DevRels and people in the tech scene to actually come up with the solutions. We wouldn't go far because the things that actually need innovation are not within the tech sector. They are beyond the tech sector. So we actually, I think people just need to open up their minds and realize, okay, there's this thing called technology. How can I apply it in my day-to-day work? And how can we move from here? It doesn't, you don't need to think about the how to implement it. You can think about, okay, I'm a normal user. I'm Kamau in the workshop. How can I make sure that this workshop will run efficiently with the use of technology? I don't need to think about the how. I can always consult technologist X, Y, Z, and all that. Yes. I think almost when you think about every time you're creative or you're trying to come up with something, every time you think about the how, it stops there. But if you block every kind of doubt and imagine all in your wildest dreams, what you can come up with, you would actually come up with a very good solution to almost anything that you're thinking about. But the moment you start thinking, if I want this UI to look like this, and I don't know, maybe material UI, then you won't go far. So don't think about the tool, think about the final result. You figure out the journey as you go.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. And now, since you mentioned education, and you said that's one of the ways that we could improve, that we could work on, just implementing it in our education system right from a younger age.
Yes.
Let's do something interesting. Let's make it fun. Let's play pretend, so to say. You are now the cabinet secretary. In charge of education, or even scratch that, there's a global parliament, and you are the minister of education in the global
all the climate summit.
Yes. You're now giving your suggestions in the education field, how we can incorporate tech better for a better, or to increase the pace at which the tech evolution is happening. What are random ideas you would have?
Wow. Please, can we IP whatever I'm about to say, because I might use it as my next solution. But one of the things that I think should be put in our curriculum right now is I envision a world where the industry is working with the education system hand to hand. Let it not be academic sector and now industry. You finish school, maybe, let me give an example of right now in uni. There's someone doing Visual Basic or C++.
Yes, very true.
And they get out of here and they realize that I actually need to learn Python. Python is what is needed. So how can we reconcile the two? The industry comes and says, this is actually the skills that I need for this particular role. Then the school is like, okay, how can I match up to what is needed in the industry? Or how can we work together to come up with a curriculum that works best for both of us? Because I think a lot of us spend so much time trying to learn to keep up with the industry when we could have actually learned that in school. And it will also be very useful to ensure that if this is what I'm learning in school and it's what's expected in the industry, it gives me more room to actually innovate around what the industry needs, more than trying to keep up with what is in the industry. The industry also, it's not like the ultimate measure. It also needs some improvement, but I'm spending so much of my time trying to keep up with what the industry needs and less about how I can improve the industry, which should be the ultimate job. So please, in this summit, what I would say is the industry can work together. The job industry should work together with the academia industry to come up or reconcile the curriculum to make sure that both of them can match up to what each other need.
So make it as relevant as possible.
Yes.
Aside from education, in what other ways can Africa help increase its pace of evolving?
I think a lot of Africans are very brilliant and we come up with a lot of good solutions. But what we lack is exposure, like I mentioned earlier. And this exposure comes with money and capital and funding. So I think in Africa, we can just there's just a handful of the tech or the startups that actually provide funding. So one of the things that I think should help improve the African state of technology is to provide more platform for startup incubation, including funding. And access to this funding does not necessarily mean that I need to have a white person in my team to get the funding. Because there's been a lot of that, There's been a lot of that almost every startup that's coming up has to have some sort of inclusion, quote unquote, and diversity for it to attract the kind of funding. Let the idea be validated on its own without necessarily having to know person XYZ to be on that team.
Yeah. So the startup industry, which you had mentioned earlier, that Africa does have a lot of startups.
It does.
Yeah, if you were to draw a graph and we were starting from zero point of origin.
Yes.
My math teacher is listening. Point of origin. And if you draw your graph, you say on startups, maybe we're towards the peak because it's getting to a lot of them as the day goes by, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so trying to find a way to expose them, to give them funding, angel investors even. Doesn't always have to be a venture.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't have to be a venture capital. It can be an angel investor. Yeah, and those of us who are listening and can be angel investors, what are we waiting for?
There we go. Yeah, the Africa we want.
Because sometimes we think that we need some $1 million account balance for us to support an idea that we are interested in. Yeah. Then also something else that I can also mention in this same context is that we need to collaborate more.
Yeah, true.
You can't be the only person that comes up with that idea and brings it to life. You have people in your team, in your circle. Someone knows someone who can come together and we can bring this idea to life. Maybe you're just the developer, but you don't know the business aspect of it. You need someone in finance. You need someone in strategy. You need someone in branding.
Yeah.
So if we can collaborate more, we could actually have more, we could succeed more. But sometimes we want to get the $100,000 funding and pocket it on our own. We don't want to share the equity. Sometimes back we were talking with some developers how sometimes someone approaches you to work on their startup. They don't want to offer you equity, but at the very early stage of an idea of a startup, they don't have much to pay you. Maybe your worth. Why is equity not a point of discussion as part of my percentage for pay? This way, I'm able to actually pull my weight and give my all to this idea. Then we can actually grow together.
That makes a lot of sense. Let me try and coin it in a story, right? So here I am. I am trying to provide a solution that solves an African problem. I am maybe particularly not in the tech field, but I have an idea that can be solved with tech. You said I should not think about the how. I know the goal. But for the how, I'm not very sure. So what you've said so far is, first of all, let me look for communities around me, right? Let me find people around that maybe in that sort of interaction or in that networking, I'll get someone who knows the how, the technological part. So here I am trying to start this up. I found my person in the community and we're ready to build this, to scale it and to deploy this solution so that it can help as many people as possible. So I can now call myself a startup founder. Something of the sort.
Entrepreneur, tech entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur. They like using the term CEO and founder.
CEO and founder. I heard it attracts a lot of connections on LinkedIn. Go on.
Good point. So here I am, CEO and founder. Now I want to scale up. What are avenues you think you could use to, get in touch with people who can help me get started with the funding, with the investment, and also tying to what you have said, how can I not work in a silo? Where can I get other solutions, or how do I get started? How do I get to that point? Because we don't want to work in silos. We want to help each other, get funding. So how do I get to that point?
How do you get to that point? Okay, so you have an idea, you have identified the people you want to work with, or some of the people that you want to work with.
Yes.
I think sometimes an idea is just an idea before it's tested, the viability of it. So come up with an MVP. MVP is very under-resourced. Like, you don't need a lot of resources to create a prototype of what you're trying to come up with, or the product you're trying to build.
Yeah.
Then second step, this is something proprietary to you. So you need to protect it first.
Oh, yes.
So can you consult a lawyer? Because there are a lot of people that you're going to bring to your startup in the course of your growth journey. So you need to make sure that whoever you bring on board is bound by a contract such that they can't, quote unquote, steal your idea.
Yeah.
That's the first step. We're actually building something with a friend of mine. It's still in the incubation stage, but that's one of the things that that's the first thing we did, because we need to protect our
Idea.
IP. Yes. So the next thing I think you need to do now, let's say now you have the prototype. This prototype is what is going to convince an investor that whatever you're trying to come up with is useful, or it's something that solves a real problem.
Yeah.
And test the viability of it. So go and take it out there, get real data, because I don't think anyone can put their money somewhere that has not been validated. Otherwise, they will lose it.
Yeah.
So that's, for me, that will be the second step. When you're finding an investor, get a prototype that is already protected. Then another thing, I think there are a lot of incubation centers that have come up in Africa in terms of, I think I've heard of Adenian Labs, I've heard of Mest Africa. Mest Africa was very popular in Ghana, and I think in Nigeria. I think they even had some Kenyan startups at some point. But there are a lot of companies that are incubating startups. But those ones, you also have to be very careful with them in terms of what are they offering and at what cost in terms of equity and all that. So those are some of the things that, personally, those are the first steps I would do. Sometimes if I don't need venture capital for incubation, I've already identified my team. If I get an angel investor, why not? I can get started. Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now that you've mentioned about incubation hubs and incubation centers,
Yes.
how can you tell us more about how do they contribute to this tech evolution, especially in Africa? Are they enough? Do we have a long way to go? Are they serious? Or, like you've said, you have to be careful. What do you mean by that?
Yes. So I have a couple of friends who have been in some of these incubation companies. And one of the things that I realized with them was there's a lot of growth that you encounter as a person. Let's give an example. Right now, maybe I'm in school. I've come up with an idea. I don't have enough resources to get to implement the entire solution end to end and take it to market. So I need a bit of help in terms of design thinking, branding, strategy, all these things that bring a product to life, right? So one of the things that incubation centers help you with is that journey to ideate, from ideation to actual product delivery. It helps you to actually strategize and position your product for the market. That is one thing that if you don't have enough resources, you might not be able to afford it. So the incubator comes in handy. They also give you a supervisor to work with you in the journey to make sure that they ask you enough questions, the product delivery is on course, and all those deliverables are met. So, and another thing that I see happening is, I think there's one in Kenya, I don't want to mention names. One of them is that you just get hired alone, you have an idea, then they join you, they combine you with other like-minded people, you get to choose your team. So during the incubation stage, the entrepreneurship incubation stage, with you guys can maybe zero into an idea and work together. So maybe we are a class of 20 people. So 5 people can just come together and come up with an idea. So that's actually how incubation helps you. Gives you a team, gives you resources in terms of strategy and branding, and also walk the journey with you in the entire design thinking process, and also give you the funding. So the part where I was saying that you should be careful is when it comes to someone helping you, like I said, I've listed a couple of things that they can help you with, but it comes at a cost. Some of them give you funding, maybe $1 million US for 20%. It looks, so let's work with $100,000 US because we can easily convert. So for a start, it looks like a lot of money. Looks like a lot of money. But 20% is a lot. Imagine now, the 3 of us here, we are the founders, and we've already given out 20% of our company. So it means that we are left with 80%. And 80%, you can easily say, 80% you'll get the math person. What's 80% divided by 3? So 80% divided by 3 is around 20-something, 27% thereabout. 27.28. Yes, you're very close. Wow. We are getting somewhere. So that means maybe we have something. But then 26% for lifetime is very small, because maybe in the first 5 years, that 100,000 will get depleted so quickly, because you need to pay salaries, you need to pay maybe for an office space, you need, there are so many expenses that come up with picking a startup ground up or building a startup ground up, that the money that the initial investor gave you is not enough to continue or to sustain the startup. So when you get another investor in the future, will you be able to... that 20% was already taken. That means that we have to go back to our equity and actually give out a stake. But the very first initial investor will not be able to agree to that. So there are a lot of contracts and the fine print that you have to look at in the initial stages of your startup when you're starting out. I actually have an example. There's a friend of mine who they got into this startup. They got the money. It was good at the start, and it was good. Took them, I think, 1 year to validate the idea. They got to market, and it was doing well. But the idea was so good that it was featured in the Google Startups 2022. That attracted funding from YC or Y Combinator. Now, if you know Y Combinator, you know Y Combinator. That's one of the best funding you can get for your startup. Yes. Now, the initial contract they had signed actually didn't allow them to get signed on by Y Combinator.
Oh, wow.
And Y Combinator is here giving you millions.
Wow.
But this person just gave you some 100K, and now you can't move. They spend so much money going back and forth with lawyers and paying power, those billing in the US kind of things. So they've wasted so much money trying to get out of this contract that they had signed with the initial investor that's not serving them. And now, here they are, spending the money they should have used to scale up and expand to other countries to resolve a legal issue. So it's very, very important. That's why we say the very first step is to actually get a lawyer on board, consult with a legal entity and see what exactly am I signing up for, and how can I protect my idea regardless of who funds me.
Read the fine print.
So a big question that you each and every point you're saying funding.
Yes.
We have a community of devs.
Yes.
They build good solution, scalable solution. But us saying funding each and every time, why can't we not just bootstrap and then the customer will pay our bills. Because if we sit down and each and every time say funding, and mostly we are not seeking funds from, let's say, Africa, because we are trying to grow us.
Yes.
We are seeking from outside. There's that mindset. We have seen the bigs and the big tech company closing.
Yes.
So with huge funding.
Yeah.
So, and I think is the funding that you're getting here, they are diverting your direction.
Yeah.
And yet, I'm solving this problem, but they're telling you, like, let's pivot. So how can we, like, with the talent that we have, like, help it to bootstrap and not fully rely on funding? Let it find on the way, so we can decide if we want or, like, drop it.
Oh, absolutely, actually, because I think, no, we are not saying that you rely on funding throughout. We're saying that if you want scalability, or depending on the magnitude of your idea, what's the vision? We said that you think about your solution and where you want to go, but also sometimes maybe with the resources that are needed to bring that to life are not maybe something that you can bootstrap.
Yeah.
But now, that's why I talked about an MVP.
Yeah.
Create maybe an MVP, validate it in the market, then work around a revenue stream from that MVP and see if whatever you are able to plow back can actually help you scale the company. Actually, I think it's very much about who do you have on your team and where do you want to go, because you have an idea. We are developers, we've come up with an idea, we want to strategize around it. I think the problem with us as developers sometimes is that we come up with something and boom, we are ready. Or we don't even want to. It's the same thing that we talked about on collaboration. Are we bringing someone else on board to help us think about, okay, you as a developer, can you actually come up with a business model?
No, okay.
Can you identify? now that the div has been centered and the API is fetching, are you actually, can you think about this from a business point of view? Because that's actually where we miss it. Because sometimes, there's been also that story of people are coming up with ideas and now here we are, you're getting the funding, you misuse the money, you failed after 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So as a developer, if you want to be to scale this further, you need to think about, okay, the business aspect of it. Is it sustainable? Is it viable? How can we scale it? How many streams of income can we get out of this? And how can that sustain the business in the long run? I think that's very, very important. So forget about the funding. The business aspect of that product needs to be very much viable for you to scale, regardless of whether you have funding or not. Yes.
That's a very good point that I think even most devs overlook.
Yes.
You think that, again, because the div is centered and your API is fetching responses, pap, success.
Please.
Yeah?
200.
Okay. All of them, yeah?
Yes.
We tend to assume a lot of things. The
Yes,
business,
we do.
especially the business aspect and the legal aspect. Those two we do not
We
look
actually
at as
don't
much.
think about them. We
They're
don't.
very important.
Yes.
So if you were to give this tech space 3 main arms, mambo ni matatu. If you were to give it 3 main arms that are very essential in growth and in scaling, maybe such as collaboration and the likes, what would be 3 main aspects or arms?
If I get your question, you're saying the 3 main factors or arms?
Yeah, there are definitely more, but maybe 3 that you think are very key. Maybe one, which has come up a lot, has been collaboration. That could be one aspect that is very key in order to grow in the tech field.
Yes.
So 2 others.
The 2 others. So collaboration. The other one is viability stroke sustainability, because it's not enough for you to build something once. It's about the future of it. Is it sustainable? Is it something? Then the other thing I would say is flexibility. It ties more into the sustainability of it because times are changing. Maybe the product you had yesterday is not something that's needed today. I was talking with one of my mentors the other day, and one of the things that came up was I've been constantly consulting in data analytics and technical writing, and one of the things that has come up now with the AI is how can I then position myself in the face of AI to still deliver what I was delivering, but with a more focus. So I shouldn't treat this as a threat or AI as a threat or a competition. I should treat it as a tool. And so as a business, I need to think about then how do I reposition myself or my products to fit into this new market or to this new changes in the industry such that it can be sustainable even with the changing times. Let's look and take an example right now. Let's say you are working as you're a tech company that is offering, it's offering LAN cables, physical LAN cables to connect internet directly from the server to people's desks to connect to the internet, for example.
Wow, okay.
So then COVID has hit. COVID has hit and people have to work from home.
Yeah.
Do you go home as a business?
Do you increase the length of your LAN cables?
Do you increase the length? Do you increase the length of your LAN cables to get to Kino from? Yes. So that's one of the examples I'll give in terms of flexibility and also how fast you're able to keep up with the market and what is needed. Because right now, things keep changing. Your product, there's a way you can actually work with you can reposition your product to make sure that regardless of the changing times, then you can still offer the value that you are offering. Okay, you are doing LAN cables. Let's talk about wireless connectivity. How then can you accommodate that in whatever you are having? What part of your product can you pivot to make sure that it accommodates this new change in the market? So I would say collaboration, sustainability and business viability, and the other one is the flexibility to keep up.
Right, so those three: collaboration, sustainability, and flexibility.
Yes.
And seeing as you have been in the tech industry for a minute, couple of years, how would you say in each of the three the trends have been so far? Are we getting better, poorer? What are some things that have been working and what has not? You can start one at a time. Okay, so collaboration, I feel like we definitely have a long way to go in terms of collaboration because people want to eat the money alone. So I feel like this is purely my personal opinion. I feel like people could collaborate a bit more to be able to get the expertise that they want in their team without necessarily having to rely on funding or an external person to come and help them with that. You don't need to wait to fail. You can always pivot and find ways of working around that. I feel like we could do better with that. We could do better with the collaboration to just get expert support to build with the dream that we want to build. Then the other part on flexibility, I don't know. I feel like in terms of people are not really willing, a lot of people are not willing to let go of their original idea. If you wanted to build a shop for as part of your generational wealth, you believe that maybe it's the supermarket is the way to go. Maybe e-commerce could do better for the next generation in your family, but you're not willing to let go of that idea that your great-grandmother had for this shop. So it's one of those things that people need to be flexible enough to... We're not saying that jump onto every trend that's coming up, but we're also saying be flexible enough to know what's going on and how we can accommodate it in that same wavelength of building your business. So I feel like in all those three sectors, we can actually do better. We are making the strides. People are collaborating a bit more, but I'm hoping to see
you see, when you talk about tech startups, I want to see more of maybe a tech person collaborating with someone in an untech field. Okay, how can we combine this finance with tech? How can we have maybe someone in law combining with someone in tech? Like that, there's something unique that every industry brings, and that's why we started by saying that let's think about how we can apply tech beyond.
But one of the big problem is when you are going to, as techies, are going to collaborate in different spaces, like in different industries, you find that the people of other industry are resilient to like release information. Yes. Because they are saying, I'm trying to eradicate this. I'm running.
You are replacing them.
Yeah. I'm in one of the startup called Career Insurance. So in that startup, we want to like revitalize insurance.
Yes.
And when they are trying to do that, it becomes difficult because when you go to the people who have been there, they're saying, you want to take off my job. Where will I be take it in?
Yes.
And yet we are trying to make it easier.
Yes.
There's one big question that I ask each and every time I lead the community and have a discussion with them. I'm not mentioning name, but I think Poster can do better. Poster.
Way better.
Yeah, and beat
Jeez,
other
we don't even
places.
hear of them anymore.
But
that's your company.
But I think with the people there and different generation there, there's this generation thing that bring in thing. Gen Z watai kuambiwa vitu and their focus is this. Sometimes they are right.
Yeah.
But it's more of these people like, yes, they are ahead of Gen Z, but at least give them guidance, not restricting them, because at least that will make things grow. But no one wants to do that. And how can we like tell them, like, even if you're trying to show them the future, they are like, this is the future. Yeah. And not that's the future. Yeah.
I think change is difficult to embrace, very difficult. And I think now when you think about when you look at traditional corporate is weird. It's one of those corporate environments that has a lot of gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think a lot of gatekeepers in corporate, and I'm talking about gatekeepers in terms of growth, and people are resistant to change in terms of technology and the adoption of it thereof. It's they are doing it out of fear.
Yeah.
And the fear is based off of lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember the very first time we started talking about GPT?
Yeah.
It was more of something that was, even developers were afraid. I mean, we don't want to accept.
This thing is writing code.
Yes, almost every time you think about something that's going to replace you, so of course you'll be afraid.
True.
So these guys in traditional corporate are also very much afraid of being replaced. So it's the knowledge that we lack.
Yeah.
It's the knowledge that they lack. So I'm thinking about the guys at the insurance you mentioned, and how we can communicate that the technology that we are trying to bring here, maybe we are reducing paperwork for a start.
Yeah.
I need to educate you more on why we are doing this, why the paperwork is not serving us anymore, and how you can use this technology as a tool and not something that replaces you. How can you use it to your advantage?
True.
Because it's the same thing that we said. Right now, maybe in my line of work, I print papers or I send out insurance copies for people to sign. How can I tell you as an insurance broker inside the company that, you can do this from your computer without necessarily having to go out there to look for this person to sign and coming back to print again and send it back to me and scan and all that. So I'm giving it to you. I'm explaining this technology to you from a place of how it can help you and not necessarily how it can replace you. So let's focus more on preaching tech or automation of any manner from a place of a tool more than something that replaces people, because that's what brings the fear. But we have a long way to go. I know I've developed systems and waited for people to use and still taking some time. But I've been paid for it, so.
So how has the experience been like? You've said you have been building solutions.
Yes.
And no one has been using.
Oh, people, there's a lot of resistance. Every time you automate things somewhere in our work environment, there's the resistance that it faces in the first maybe 3 months before someone actually embraces it, or an authority figure comes from the top and says that you guys have to use this. It's a whole changeover process that I think every company should have maybe a change advisory board that makes sure that once a system is built, you are able to follow through. Because people are afraid of using the system, or they are used to their own. There's someone who told me that I find writing easier. Why should I just keep typing? They actually want to handwrite to fill a form when they can actually fill that form from my computer or from their computer. So it's because they're used to that. So that resistance that comes is very normal. I'm so used to it right now, but I think it requires some sort of people are in charge of ensuring that whatever direction that we want to go as a company or as an organization, there's someone who is enforcing that to ensure that people can actually use the tools that we're building for them.
Yeah.
Because we'll never move forward. Maybe this is just the first leg of automation, and it can help us achieve more results.
That's very true, because you see, as humans, naturally we fear change.
Yes, we
do. And
do.
Technology is a field that is always changing. It's ever changing, and everything is new. It's sort of this picture that I once saw somewhere where there was someone on the cliff. So you can imagine standing on the cliff, you really do not want to look at the bottom.
Yes.
But then, I don't remember if it was someone telling them, was it God, was it internal? I have no idea. But someone was saying jump. And the person was asking, what if I fall? And then the other response was, but what if you fly? So we keep on looking at technology from this angle of, hey, what if we fall? What if we fail? What if it ruins everything? Yet this could be the very key to unlock levels of development that we have not seen so far, yet we have the capacity to. So we should try to look at it from an angle of, what if we fly? What if we take off and suddenly we're now using the Kenyan shilling and not the dollar? We could do a lot. We really could do a lot.
Yes.
So I love that tick. There's a question. Yes. Maybe you can introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Hello, my name is Edward. I'm an engineer in Africa Stocking. I would like to ask, let's say, for things like cryptocurrency, do we see like a situation whereby, like in Africa, like we use cryptocurrency like in an basically like in a transactional manner, not for the purpose of buying and selling, basically like not for speculative purposes. Like, how do you see that?
So far, how is the speculation going? Because I think when it comes to cryptocurrency, there's a lot of governance around it, and anything currency is very much involved within the government and has a lot of bureaucracy in terms of policy making. And I think tech, it's like what you were saying with corporate world. We've done some small products. It's not being pushed and it's not being used because people are gatekeeping that. But when blockchain or the term came around, people are so focused on, like, it was such a buzzword that everyone wanted. I even wrote an article about how to use Ethereum and Web3 and all that. We were all ready to jump onto this Web3, right? And it has become more, for me, most of the blockchain companies that I've interacted with, or the people that work there, it has been more of the relations aspect of it, the community aspect of it, and less about the practicality of how to use it. There was some conversation around, using it to count livestock in Kenya. There was something about that sometimes back. It was never used.
But I know a startup that is basically using it to. It's like they are raising. You see these dead assets.
Yes.
Like you can maybe use it. You go as to the bank to use it as collateral.
Yes.
And then like get loan instead of selling maybe your goat.
Yes.
To pay maybe some fee.
They can use it as security, loan security.
Yeah. But
wow, please introduce me to them. I have some $200 somewhere.
but the big issues come in is they're saying it is immutable.
Yeah.
And what is built by man, we can do it.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse, we are the one who are creating the nodes.
Yes. Yes. So it's not. Is it secure enough? Because I think when it came, the whole concept of decentralization was very much like, it's a global currency.
Yeah.
You can do, you can transact from anywhere and all that.
Yeah.
Then the reason why I brought about the issue of governance and policies was, I think sometimes in Nigeria, sometimes back, I think 2021, 2020, in Nigeria, the central bank, their version of Central Bank of Kenya, Central Bank of Nigeria, banned it. So you actually can use it as a currency. So you see, it's already facing a lot of backlash from the people who are actually supposed to authorize it to be used as a currency.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I want to be positive, but the volatility of it also doesn't help, because today things are up and running, tomorrow things are shaky. So even you can't trust, because if you make the transaction today, what happens tomorrow? But what I'm actually more interested in right now is the tokens, anything tokenization, and how you can apply the concept of tokens to transact. That's actually something that I see will attract a bit more stability as compared to cryptocurrency, because of the volatility of it, now backlash from the government. I think the governments, unless they come together, and I think the problem in Africa right now is the fact that we really don't make decisions on our own. We kind of our governments don't make decisions alone. There's some sort of, we can't control the shilling right now, and all these things, the dollar rate, the pound rate, all these currency issues with currency are very much affected by governance, and it's not just internally within a country. It has to be global. So those are kind of global solutions that are needed for it to be a global currency, for example.
So that's evolution in the currency side.
Yes.
We've seen currency move from, if we're going way back, we could start from barter trade. Barter trade, please bring your goat, I bring my coffee. From grains and cereals and exchange of goods to actually paper.
Yes.
We are thriving in the M-Pesa era. And then there's cryptocurrency that's now coming up.
Yes.
What are maybe two other sectors that you would love to see evolve with time in the African setting? Currency is maybe one of them that has gone through the test of time. So two others that would be interesting to see change with time.
I think when you talk about the internet, but just the internet, then the power of it, the social media, the globalization, the interconnectivity of it. Right now when you look at the social media and how people are able to create jobs from TikTok and then these other areas, you can see that there's something there. The problem is, I've never seen a social media application coming from Africa. Do we have? And whenever we have social or social-based or product-based tech products, we never really, you see, like the way Twitter is paying people, you can see how TikTok is paying people, sometimes the Facebook marketplace, all these applications, they found a way that the users are not just users. They are users that are also benefiting from. Like there's a revenue stream that is also benefiting the user. So I think one of the things that I'm hoping to see in Africa is someone actually coming up with ways, and that's why I mentioned the issue of, or the concept of tokens. Like, what else can you come up with that actually, like, you're not just begging us to sign up to your application. There's a subsidy to it, or there's an advantage to it. So I think people should start thinking more into your users are not just your users, they are your customers, but they can also benefit from your application. So make that two-way revenue stream, and let's see how best we can build something that that's global, but also very sustainable.
Something built by us for us.
Something by us for us, for sure. Yes.
There's this lovely product that Africa Stocking is yet to give us.
Yeah, watch this space.
Watch this space.
Watch
Please.
this space.
Watch this space.
I'll be here.
There's a good product built by us for us, and soon when you see the
Watch this
names
space.
in places,
Please, I'm looking forward.
it sounds just like the product you've described.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
The way
That'll
you
be so
I
nice.
think the who and the who of Africa Stocking should hear him. And
That would be
basically,
nice.
we put you in.
Please. Is my employer listening?
But that would definitely be.
Yeah, that would
Yeah.
actually be very, very, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to seeing that day. But you said a very interesting thing. I'd love to see a social media
For
platform
us.
built by Africans for Africans.
Yes.
We know what we like. Let's actually have the emojis do things we say. Can I have an emoji with 3 fingers like cause mambo ni matatu?
Yes. I mean, yeah, because yes, and how I think when you think about the concept of localization, I was recently researching more on that, and I realized that sometimes some of the products that do well are the ones that are contextual to the environment they're built for.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, originally, TikTok was built for the country it comes from. It had to be